I'm going to dive into today is I'm going to share a little bit of view of how Salesforce thinks over the next couple of years, just a broad view of technology. And yeah, our emerging strategy principle line job is to kind of work with the C-suite and a lot of our top customers around the world, just to kind of imagine where to see the future heads. I have to start every single one of my presentations with a big disclaimer, basically saying don't ever buy anything off of Salesforce. Anything I say, my job is beyond the public roadmap. There's some lawyer somewhere in San Francisco that's happy to say this, but just don't buy anything off what I say. Okay, cool. All right, so to level set, one of the most important things to understand about when you think about the future is that you're going to hear every single company talk about how they're investing into AI. I can tell you, you can look at every single quarterly call, every single keynote, every single time, everybody's talking about their investments in AI. But I want to level set, right? A lot of you guys probably know this, but we're in this space right now, which is really something called machine learning or weak or narrow AI, right? The robots and the things in the media world have been telling you what real AI is. We are a long, long ways away from that. And even when you talk about machine learning, you know, it can take years, right? I've worked a lot with Amazon and Google and Microsoft and all the rest of them. They're spending a lot of time just even trying to understand when you become a machine learning company and how that actually transforms your thinking. It takes a long time. So when every single customer says, hey, we're all going to be doing AI, just realize it's going to take them a long time before we get to that level of kind of intelligence. But you can do some really powerful things with that. And I used to start with an interface a lot of people knew about. I used to talk about Netflix, right? Because Netflix, if you didn't know, if you see a specific title card for like Stranger Things, they're using machine learning to pick from 86,000 different pictures to get the one that gets you to spend more time browsing, right? Because the goal is not to get you to watch the show, it's to enjoy Netflix. But we are changed a little bit, right? That's not really innovative anymore. That shows you how fast you can kind of become innovative and not. A lot of times we look towards the gaming industry for this kind of stuff nowadays. Because they're using machine learning in things like creating the commercials, right? So if you go to Steam Labs, you'll see that they're creating the 15 to 30 second creative piece that goes in front of a customer on the fly, machine learning. Or they've figured it out. It's better to put controls back in the arms of users because that trains machine learning better. So when you log into Netflix or Hulu and everything else like that, they don't really show you why they're making the choices. They should. But the customer I always like sharing with because people don't know about this, because I had the pleasure of working with this team. If you see on Amazon it says customers like you bought this item, it's a flat lie as of many years ago, because that algorithm is actually built not to get you to buy things, it has nothing to do with other customers, it's getting you to shop. Right? Time spent. That's actually the most valuable thing in Amazon, right? You spend more time, you like Amazon, then you're eventually going to buy something. And that's where we're using interfaces in machine learning not to become predictive, which is what everybody thought we were going to do. It's being prescriptive. It's putting your customers on a path that gets you to the point that is most valuable for the company. But again, we're always going to keep bringing human beings back. I can tell you this because we're not perfect. Every algorithm on the planet has got a long way to go before they're replacing human beings. And we're in a space now where people are figuring that out, right? So they're going back and they're bringing human beings back, and the algorithms are not perfect, right? Disney and Netflix and a lot of their sites are bringing human beings back in. In Silicon Valley, we've known this for a while, they're called centaur techniques, right? The idea that it's about 70 or 80% is the algorithm, but when the algorithm says, I don't have high confidence, you loop in anything, right? So yeah, in this strange role of being an emergent strategy principal, I get asked quite a lot, what does the future look like? And partially because I used to work for, he just announced our retirement, but our chief future officer, Peter Schwartz. He's kind of world famous for being a futurist, not only for doing some amazing things inside of strategy in the world, but writing reviews like Minority Report, War Games and Sneakers, and Deep Impact on his free time. And we always used to say this story in emergent strategy. Those who live by the crystal ball eat glass, right? A futurist's job is really painful because there's a lot of times you can think you have it totally right, like here in Blade Runner where there's an android, a human being that you cannot tell the difference of that's walking around, but he's sitting in front of a payphone. And it's because people have a really hard time imagining the future. But the easiest guidance that I got from Peter was to think about this in 3 ways, right? If you think about removing pain or augmenting things that we do right now, or trying to think of something new, those are generally the 3 buckets that you need to cover when you think about the future. So I'm going to dive through each of those. The first one I can tell you about, and everybody in this room has to deal with it, and this is what something machine learning can do really well with, is scheduling meetings. If you're one of those people that don't have an executive assistant in a company, you don't realize the superhuman power of that individual, right? Where they can help you manage your schedule, your email, and everything else. And that's what Clara tries to do. Clara is an email service that all you have to do is CC in Clara. And what it'll do is it will individually reach out to everybody on the email chain, find out the time, find out the place, schedule it, and get everything booked. But the interesting thing a lot of people don't know about is that it's a Centaur company, right? The idea is that what happens is if the algorithm doesn't know the answer, it taps an executive assistant on staff at Clara. They will follow up, they will answer it. You have no idea if you're reaching out to a human being or a machine learning algorithm, but at the same time, that trains the system to get better faster. Now, the important point about that, though, is not just the fact that it doesn't have a drop-in service. It gives things that human beings still need to have, which is emotion and context, right? The famous competition they had against one of their competitors, X.AI, was in the New York Times because they tried to win over the New York Times team, and the chief editor responded to an email saying, sorry, I can't make this meeting, I have a funeral to go to. And X.AI's automated response was, sorry, please just say yes or no. Or in the reverse, for Clara, it was a human being that answered it and said, like, we're so sorry for your loss, don't worry about this, we'll find another time. And again, that's the level of engagement you can keep with customers, and that's why we're still going to have these kind of Centaur companies around for a long time. Another great example of this, though, is a company called Nexar. If you guys don't know what Nexar is, you've probably seen it. It's usually the camera you'll see in a Lyft or an Uber car or somebody driving around, where it does nice things like it records if they're in an accident, it will automatically send that to an insurance agent, or if somebody doesn't come back to the car, it will automatically send out the Lyft and Uber, all these kind of new features. But the important part about Nexar, and why it was one of the #1 top startups in Israel for a long time, is because of this. They understood the model and the value of data. So what this was free. Everybody could sign up for free. And why you sign up for it, they had 6 to 8 different times they would tell you, you are giving us a live streaming video camera. That's what we're getting out of this. You guys are getting all these new features, these things that make it painless if you're in an accident, and gives you all the security stuff, but we're getting a live data stream. And they've used this to make some of the best mapping data on the planet. Because you can only have so many Google cars with cameras driving around New York compared towards they can have 10, 15,000 people in New York driving around with Nexar cameras and have a live feed of the city. And a lot of companies are looking at this understanding now that this is the type of relationship you need to have with customers. You need to tell them, this is what I'm getting as a relationship. This is the data that I need from you. You give me this, I give you something well, right? And that's a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about later about privacy and GDPR and everything else. We're also going to see devices expand. You know, virtual reality and augmented reality have been around for a while. A lot of people thought they were going to go away Google Glass, so they're not. And partially because it just takes time. And also, outside of it, is when it moves beyond being first movers in entertainment is when it shows up in the real world. Like virtual reality is really hitting the next stage. They sold a record amount of headsets, during this last Christmas even Mark Zuckerberg says that the fact that like there was $5 million spent in the Oculus Rift store on Christmas Day alone, and we're starting to see it sell out places, everything else. And partly because we're seeing it in other places. A perfect example of this is what Walmart does to train employees. I love this story. This is the fact that if you are an 18-year-old person who gets to work at Walmart and you were told to go on the floor during Black Friday, that's a little bit of a scary day to be out on the floor. And for a long time, these kind of companies were in the news when things would go horribly wrong. So they worked with a company called Striver to create an education plan to teach them what it's like to be there on Black Friday. Because they've had 360 video cameras in every single Walmart in the US for the last couple of years. They feed that into virtuality, and now you can experience the crowd. You know when to look for people that are fighting or when to call the cops and all these other things. And you're trained for 2 to 3 hours before you're allowed to be on the floor. This is why they're not in the news anymore. And it shows you that education can be hugely valuable compared to a boring video, with multiple choice quiz kind of things at the end to feel the experience, be there firsthand. The other one that's really interesting is how it's shown up in the medical industry. Virtual reality has actually been very quickly found out that it's a very cheap headset with very powerful, analytics and other things that can feed into the system, right, to tell you a lot about an individual, like how much your head moves and eye movement and all that other kind of stuff like that. And they found out at Stanford Medical Research that if you actually go through typical testing for Alzheimer's disease, it's like a 50-page quiz, you have to answer a bunch of questions, and it has like a 30% accuracy rate. Compared to, they've created this little test. It puts you in a boat, and your job is to drive a boat from one stop to about 6 stops and pick up stuff and drop off stuff. They can tell within 3 minutes using machine learning and the headset with a 94% accuracy rate if you have any early sign of memory issues. And there's some very valuable tools that we're going to see this expand a lot because it's an easy tool to use for diagnostic. Augmented reality is on the other side of the fence, and a lot of people ask me, when do I see which one's going to win? In reality, they're going to blend really together, but augmented reality is a bit further off, because this is a really, really hard problem. When you get involved with people walking around with it, to sunlight, to everything else that gets involved, augmented reality is very difficult, and it's still in the expensive range, right? The HoloLens 2, which is what's shown here, is still $2,500-ish, and it's really for the medical industry and the manufacturing industry and the car industry. It's very small. And we're still going to see, everybody talk about these headsets, right? Like Facebook and Apple and a lot of others are working on this. It's going to take about 2 to 3 years to really hit where we're at kind of right now with virtual reality. I did have, though, the perfect example of this in my life. I share this story to show you what you can do with technology. I had the joy and the very different experience of having to go through brain surgery a year and a half ago because I had a hard time sleeping. I would lay down, my left ear would start to ring. And I'd go to the doctor here and he'd say it's Salesforce and it's Netflix and it's everything that you're doing wrong with saying playing video games. But on the reverse was that they said, get the MRI. I said, okay, got it. Found out I had a small little tumor in my ingredient balance nerve called an acoustic neuroma. So I go to UCSF Mark Benioff's hospital, and I found out the best place to do this on the planet is actually the newest Kaiser hospital in San Diego. And I had doctors working on me wearing the new HoloLens. I had 2 neurosurgeons working on me for 12 hours using the new HoloLens 2. There was a 3rd doctor using the HTC Vive, watching in virtual reality in New York to learn the surgery. It's just a rare surgery to have. I woke up in the first of its kind an artificial intelligent bed that could mold and move me throughout the night and stand me up straight. And this is one of the most expensive rooms in all of California. And yet, this is the impact. Normally, I would have been in recovery for 4 to 6 months. I would have had a 25% chance of losing my hearing, 10% facial strength, and about a 5% chance of dying. After a surgery like that, I was in and out of the hospital in 3 days, flying back home from San Diego back up to San Francisco. And I was back in the office in 4 weeks. And that's the type of level of investment you get when you put massive amount of technology behind these situations. That's why a lot of times when you walk around the hospitals and the doctor's offices, you can't find nurses right now. It's because they're spending all their money on this stuff. Because if they can figure it out, you can get in and out of the hospital in like 1/10 of the time. And we're going to see that a lot. And that's why you're going to see a lot more technology show up in the healthcare industry. And another perfect example of that, which is machine learning at its kind of core, Google found out some interesting stats. If you have an eye doctor look in your eye and they're trying to check for any sort of early sign of a retinal disease, they have anywhere from a 70% down to an 18% chance of catching any sign of any early cancer or anything like that, any sign of retinal disease. And Google said that's the stuff that image recognition does perfect on. That's what actually machine learning is really, really valuable for. So you're creating a camera with Verily, and you can go to the doctor's office and looks in your eye and it has an 80 or 90% chance of catching it almost immediately. And again, that's the type of stuff. It's not going to be the replacement for the doctor, it's just another diagnostic tool. Because when a doctor takes about 10 or 12 different data points to make a decision, machine learning takes thousands upon thousands, right? There's a lot more data in depth that has value. Now, another one when we get into kind of the crazy stuff that's going on, I got to try this recently, and it was pretty scarily accurate. They can actually use Wi-Fi nowadays to find out the emotion of people in a room. And how they do this is they use Wi-Fi and the feedback from it and all these kind of things to actually read things like your heart rate and your brain activity and everything else like that. And something came out of the MIT Media Lab, and it's got a 57% accuracy rate. Now, this shows you where's your data privacy. I just walked into a Wi-Fi signal. They now know if I'm emotionally angry or sad or anything else like that. But it shows you the level of depth of what you can do when you start using machine learning, right? There's a whole lot of valuable data that a lot of people weren't using to make sense. You could use these kind of algorithms to train things to learn a lot about people. And there's actually really valuable tools for this. You can imagine going to a therapist and asking for an opioid of some sort and trying to say like, no, I don't have any issues. And this thing helping the doctor say like, should I begin this person or not? Those are choices you want to have data to feed into, not just the practicability for a doctor to check notices of what you look like. The other one, and this is probably the most futuristic company I met with the last couple of years, it was 2 years ago I think I met with them, is a company here in Berkeley called Konaku. And what they have is the first of its kind. This is the first, let's see if I get this right, it's a wetware bioprocessor chip, which means it's 119 living neuron cells grown in a lab that wire to a processor. So this device, about the size of a hockey puck, can smell. And it can smell better than anything on the planet because it's got cells from canines and birds and dogs and all that kind of stuff like that in that device. It was originally a DARPA project. They used to smell explosives in the Middle East for saving soldiers' lives. Now they're finally starting to get commercial use, and they're doing some crazy stuff with it. Beyond, there's one from a security standpoint still, right? They have this test hallway in Toronto where you can literally walk straight into the airport because you can skip all the lines and the TSA and the metal detectors. This thing knows if you have anything that you're on you that you're not supposed to. But there's some other really valuable ones, right? Like Kaiser's been playing around with this. They can actually put it above doorways in doctors' offices, and this thing can smell 9 different versions of lymphoma. Because they found out that dogs can smell cancer, and there's some really valuable stuff there. When you put dog cells in a device like this, then you can actually let the doctor know this person needs to have a test. We actually have smelling early signs of cancer in them. And things like that. It shows the level we're getting to marrying together biology and technology. Now this is way beyond my time frame, right? I work in the next 2 to 5 years. This is probably the next 10, 15, 20 years. But it shows you where we're getting at to that size and scale. And it's very valuable when we start connecting those two worlds. And you would imagine a lot of the stuff I've been talking about, when people talk to me about being directly connected to the customer and all this stuff, what we're really getting to a point is another level of productivity, right? If you have an executive assistant, you know how much it changes your life. They go through your email, plan out your day, your travel, all that kind of stuff. Imagine if I took Clara and I gave it to every single person in a company at a level that could do everything from scheduling meetings to answering email to knowing where you're going to be going and all that kind of stuff. That just unlocks productivity at a vast scale, right? What people can do with their job drastically changes. And that becomes this broader landscape of a digital assistant, right? This is what the Google Duplexes and everything else are trying to move towards, is these kind of worlds where we have these helpers that help us out in what we're doing. So to kind of piece this all together, I'm going to paint a little picture of what it could be over the next couple of years, right? And you can imagine the next couple of years, you would normally say, hey, Alexa, wake me at 8 o'clock in the morning, and set your alarm, right? But Alexa's going to be a little bit smarter in the next couple of years, right? Alexa might say, I already know there's something on his schedule at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he's always late to work, and he's didn't sleep well last night, or everything else like that. I'm actually going to get up at 7:30. There's really important news. You need to hear the newest things from, your kids in college to, a latest tweet from our president or whatever needs to be told to you. These things are going to get you up and running for the day, right? And they'll know when to wake you up in reverse. And it might also tell you something like, hey, your doctor wants to check up on you. We want to send you an apple. You got it yesterday. It's in your fridge. Just eat the apple in the morning, right? Because we're seeing the first round of these. I'm about to try one too. The first round of ingestible sensors, right? So these things that can live in your stomach for about 3 days, and they actually feed a lot of information to your phone, which go to your doctor, which lets you do things like not go to the doctor's office, they can go while you're home. Now, one thing to show, and I have to say this too, because it's pretty crazy, a lot of the speaker design is going to have to change just in the world, because these really bright guys at Michigan State figured out using a laser pointer how to actually input voice commands to any single speaker device. And it was just something that showed in the news. They had big issues with Tesla and the rest, but they were showing that they could actually get commands to it from outside the car. And a lot of things are going to have to reimagine that interface. So just when you think of what an Alexa is going to look like, it's not going to look the same in a couple of years. And you can imagine that after you start your day, you get into a car, and it's probably going to be the same car for a while, but we're moving and shifting to this world with autonomous vehicles and changing the environment, right? Like I've worked with most of the C-suite across all the major car companies. They're all working on this, and more importantly, they're figuring out what the new environment is like, right? Because what was normally spent paying attention to the road, you're going to be able to have this new area where it can be a retail environment, it can be an entertainment environment, it can be a dating environment. I've seen a lot of crazy things that are going to be doing with autonomous vehicles, but you can imagine that way of getting to work is going to change. And throughout this whole time, your ecosystem follows you, right? So you're going to have the same conversation you had with Alexa in your car. If you went to CES, you're going to see the millions of devices Alexa is showing up in. These things are just going to be showing up in mass and creating the ecosystems that you go around it for. They'll follow with you. And then, as you're going throughout your day, that little ingestible sensor might start saying, hey, you didn't eat breakfast and you're a little cranky right now, you might want to swing by the Amazon Go store and get something to eat. And that is a very valuable step for a lot of people. It's figuring out how to understand their body a little bit better and having that kind of little assistance. I encourage you, if you haven't checked it out, go check out the Standard in San Francisco. It's kind of one of the competitors to the Amazon Go store. It's phenomenal. Because beyond just being the store that you can walk in, walk out, and pick something off the shelf and not have to pay because they have facial recognition, it does better stuff. Like they have people in there that are chefs and sommeliers and all these other kind of things like that. They're going to teach you how to cook. They're going to teach you how to try things. They're going to be tasting things. They're going to be creating this whole environment experience to learn about food. And then it'll all dish into your house. You don't even pick it up there. It'll just show up. And we're going to see more and more of that kind of level of system where you're going to have a better understanding of your body, but also the ecosystem is going to get so easier to treat your body well. But as you walk outside, there's going to be a bunch of Girl Scouts, and they're going to want you to buy cookies. And you're going to think in this dystopian world where I have something in my stomach that tells me what my doctor and everything else that I'm eating, that they're going to say you're not allowed cookies. That's not human nature. So your health assistant might suddenly say, you know what, support your local troop, eat cookies. We'll figure out a different way for you to burn off the calories, but this is a valuable thing. Right? And we're going to have that human state, right, where we understand human context. We're not going to be in this dystopian world where these devices completely change everything. So support your local troop. And then your doctor might actually check up on you remotely. And this is a really important step for a lot of healthcare companies. They're actually not doing what's called pull-in, they're doing push-out, right? Like you have to reach out to your doctor. If you feel like anything is wrong and everything's going incorrectly, they're going to change that. Like Kaiser calls it ever-present KP, right? They want to be the point where they're going into your life saying, it's time to get a checkup. It's time to go see your doctor. You need to be doing this, that, and stuff like that. Because preventative medicine is way better than fixing the problem by the time somebody actually finds the problem. And that is a lot of stuff that you're going to have changed. The doctor might say, hey, I was looking at your sleep schedule from your Apple Watch. I was looking at what you ate yesterday, and we're all looking at everything that I've seen. It looks great. We'll catch up with you in a couple of weeks, right? And that's going to be more of the idea that instead of you having to figure out how to schedule it, how to get there, everything else, they're going to do it for you. And then at the end of the day, they're going to say, well, we're going to burn off those cookies, and we're going to do it in a little bit of a different, fun way. If you haven't seen this, and you ever get a chance to go out to New York, definitely go try it. It's the first of its kind. It's the virtual reality gym called the Black Gym. And it is freaking amazing, because gyms suck. I don't care what anybody else here says, like, they're terrible. They're boring, you're always self-conscious about yourself, like, it's this whole motivation thing to go, be better about yourself. I'd rather go play games with my friends and like run from the zombies in The Walking Dead and run around playing Fortnite and whatever else to make it a fun social experience. And millennials and Gen Zs want that level of fun experience, even when it's something healthy, right? And we're going to find out those fun ways to do this. This is why most of the Hollywood companies are working on these kind of experiences, because people aren't going to the Westfield malls, people are not going out to the movie theater, they're not getting out of their house because they're streaming, but you can create these cool, immersive, great ways to do things together. And we're going to see a lot of great ways to get us to be healthy and fun instead of the boring as it is now. All right, so stepping back from all this and like, what is the world going to look like? There's some important things to understand, and one of them we really talk about a lot is this whole concept of a personal data economy. I hinted at this a little bit with Nexar, and that's really, there's a whole lot of valuable information out there. And this is the kind of slide I used to show about a couple of years ago, saying like, hey, data's the new oil. Right, this is the thing you need to look at, you're going to invest into, all the DMPs and all these data lakes and data swamps and everything else out there. Like, here's all the amazing stuff you can do with all this powerful data. The problem is that people have finally figured out the value of data. And that's why GDPR and California data privacy law and all these other things are starting to show up, is because people finally realized when I signed up for Google, I didn't know what I was actually getting, and now they know all the data's gone somewhere. That level of conversation has changed drastically. I tell CEOs, I don't tell them anything about it, it's this new oil, it's this awesome, amazing thing, it's going to train all your machine learning. I say it's the new asbestos. Data is the kind of valuable tool that is really great in their awesome hands, but half the time, you don't know where it is and you're making mistakes with it all the time. That is a bad thing, right? You can end up in the news like all these other companies. I could probably fill this up with like hundreds of logos of all people that made problems with data leaks and breaches and misuse of data and bias and all these other kinds of things. It's really important to pay attention to how you use it and how you teach customers about how you're using it. And really importantly, there's different ways you need to tackle this problem, right? I talk a lot with companies about trifecta. If you don't know what they do, basically use artificial intelligence to clean up data. That is incredibly powerful to everything like fixing initials and date ranges and everything, and it can go across the blue screen cobalt thing you built in the 70s all the way up to the forward-facing AWSs and everything else that uses AI to clean up That's valuable. Half the data out there is wrong. And then the other side of it is protecting things at all times, right? You're going to hear a lot about cybersecurity over the next couple of years because all those people that have been nefarious have machine learning in their hands, and they've got really valuable tools now. So companies like Baffle do this really cool stuff. It's a local startup here that does really cool things like doing live encryption of your data at all times. So even if somebody breaches in, it's under encryption, you can't really do anything with it. And there's a lot of really cool stuff being shown there. And also when you use all this AI and data and machine learning and everything else, you gotta make sure you're doing it right. And this is something where you go 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're gonna learn a lot of mistakes that we do, and then we go back and say like, okay, let's rein this in a little bit. That's where it stage right now. You're gonna hear every single company, right, talk about the partnership on AI, our Office of Quality, or like Google's Code of Conduct. You're gonna hear like the, we're gonna regulate this stuff. We're all gonna talk about that and figure it out and trying to do it right. Because you can do some really good stuff with data and you can do some really bad stuff with data. The example I always love showing, if you don't know that picture up there, I can't remember her name, but she's called the Iron Lady in China. She was the CEO of one of the largest HVAC air conditioning companies, etc. And there was a really famous thing where she was at a company kickoff, she was giving a presentation, and the police came up to arrest her. She had 286 counts of jaywalking because her picture was on the side of buses going through Shanghai and Beijing, and she had a criminal record because of it. Like again, you can do some really good stuff with this, you can do some bad stuff with this. And it's why we start having conversations about using, facial recognition in police hearings and everything. Like there's a lot of stuff that we need to figure it out, and we're going to do that right. It's just going to take time to step back. And part of that is because we're getting really good with data. And that's the level you have to get with data nowadays. You can't think of things in the demographic mindset, right? Like I'm a white guy with glasses. No, it's I'm a gamer, I've got kids with special needs, I'm a movie fanatic. Like the things that actually make decisions in your life, those are psychographics. It's stuff the media world has done a lot about. Everybody else is coming to figure out a lot about it because those are the things that actually make the choices in your life. And you can do some really valuable things with it. The example I'd love to share, because it was one of the most fun accounts I got to work with the last couple of years, is Porsche. Because Porsche has got a really hard problem. You're looking at Tesla stock and everything else going on in their world. Everybody is looking at all the kind of new crazy luxury cars out there. But in the reverse, they weren't really a data-centric company for a lot of times, right? Like they had basically the same audience as always. If I asked you, what is a Porsche owner, and you put it in your head, and you all probably have the same exact vision of that person. So they took all of their data, they went to NYU, and they said, let's do some personas now. Let's figure out the customers, and learn a little bit better from them. And they came back with most of that they already knew. But the one they didn't know about at all, I totally understand, is somebody who likes to own a Porsche is the dad that loves to brag in front of his kids. So they created this whole commercial series called the Everyday School Bus. There's a yellow Porsche that drives in front of the school. The dad's blaring like Rolling Stones, something like that. The cute bell rings, kids run out, they're like super embarrassed, like they're hiding their heads and everything. And then the dad just laughs, gets in, and they drive off, and they say Everyday School Bus. That single advertisement campaign did better than all of 2017 and 2018 combined. It's the #1 thing they're focused on right now from the user understanding because they've never tapped into that. They never understood their customers' level. That's an important piece for dads. And that's the level you have to get at, right? And that's where we're getting to understand data. And that's where you have to get really good at managing what you should know, how you're going to know it well. And also on that side, I have to show this because I do a lot of work with the Disney, the Foxes, the Warner Brothers, and so on. It's all Imagine that are trying to spend time getting in front of you. And a lot of CMOs on the planet, advertising is going to change. Most people in here don't want advertising in any shape, way, or form, and how the world's been shocking us with commercials and ads and everything else like that for a long time. We're resistant to this point at it. So you have to think about that. You might have really good data and you might have a good understanding of the customer. If you don't create the advertisement that matches it, you're not going to look at it. And that is changing quite a lot. I've worked with Rashad and WTB and Publicis and all the rest of them. They know this, and it's going to drastically change how companies think about getting to a customer. Is you've got to be incredibly detailed and targeted, or they're not going to listen. So I'm going to end on some mega threads here, and I think the one that I get asked about a lot, because it just happened, is everybody asks me, like, hey, how did CES go? I've been to CES for the last 5 to 10 years, and I can tell you CES sucked. And I say that lovingly because I'm as a futurist. My job is to know the next things that are happening in the next 25 years. Everything that was at CES was the same thing it was at last year, right? And the year before that. And the reason why is because you go through, and when you think about scenario planning and future thinking and everything else like that, you go through waves, right? We're not in the age of innovation right now, we're in the age of implementation. The flying cars, the talking fridge, the new 8K televisions, all that other kind of stuff like that came out of CES. Same thing we saw the last couple of years. It just takes time, right? Working with you guys, and then talk with some folks in the research area, like you've got a long tailwind before like somebody came up with the idea to it actually hitting the world, right? And that's where we're changing, right? Like CES was mainly people talking about how they actually got it done now, not the envisioning, not the new stuff that's out there. And that's just going to be where companies go, right? Over the next year or two, we're going to start seeing the new innovative stuff that people have been thinking about, and they're going to start actually kicking off. It just takes time, and yes, we'll bounce back from that. The other one I talk about from companies, and just in general, when you think about the future, you got to focus on learning. It's one of the most important things in the world right now. When the world is going through this huge change, right? We call it the fourth industrial revolution. You go through that level of trying to change, you just need to keep up, and that is spending time on education, right? The World Economic Forum said most people spend 3 to 5% maybe, like on education of their job, if that, and they say it needs to be 10, 20%. Like it needs to be a main focus of your job, to just read all the podcasts, keep up with the newsletters, understand what your competitors are doing, all that kind of stuff. And that's just the core skill over the next couple of years. I recently saw the whole thing with Tesla where they were saying like, or SpaceX where they were saying like, we'll hire you, we don't care about your background. You just have to have a good attitude and be willing to learn, right? That's the kind of employees that a lot of companies like even Salesforce are looking for. We're looking for the people which are called the any-collar workers. I can give somebody this job, I don't care if they've ever done it before, they'll figure it out. That's the level of learning you have to have. I just encourage you a lot, spend your time on education and keeping up. Because if you don't, you're going to be kind of lost in just what we call the whitewash format. The other one I get asked about all the time, they used to ask about like, I don't want to be Uber, that's kind of faded away. Now it's like, I don't want to be taken over by Amazon. And they ask me like all the crazy stuff about like, why is Amazon doing so well? And I can show you this thing like, hey, look, all those brands on the left, they're smaller than Amazon combined, right? Amazon kind of took everybody's lunch, they're over $1 trillion. They're doing really, really well. And people thought it was like, oh, it's customer service ratings and everybody loves Amazon, everybody has Prime, like ask y'all raise your hands, and everybody would say probably have it. But reality, the thing that makes Amazon actually do well is something that I've noticed in working with them, is that they do something very different than most companies. They celebrate failure more than they celebrate success, and they do it loudly and proudly. Most companies, especially here in Silicon Valley, you make a mistake, your project fails, millions of dollars down the drain, you're working on your LinkedIn, you're talking to your friends, you're working on your resume, you're already out working at competitors. So we'll all shift around in a couple of years from those different companies, right? Amazon doesn't do that. Amazon actually celebrates when they screw up. The perfect examples of this that I can even show in America for the two companies. When Apple Maps was trying to compete with Google Maps, and Steve Jobs said, you got 6 months to create a mapping program. They didn't win, and Google Maps did a lot better. Fired the whole team. He's like, you guys need to go find a new job. You didn't do what I want you to do, right? If you remember, Amazon created a cell phone, which nobody in this room owns. It was millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars on the drain. It was a big joke in the industry, but it was like, why did they think they could actually build a cell phone like crazy? And you would think they would be fired and they'd let go. They took the entire 600-person team to Hawaii, and they celebrated. And they gave speeches, they gave promotions, they gave bonuses. They gave a guy a $20,000 bonus for the worst advertisement of the cell phone. And then Bezos gave this really famous speech. You look it up online. He said, like, you guys did something amazing. You built a cell phone. We were a book company, and you built a cell phone. Like, do you not understand the monumental task of that? The crowd went crazy, right? They loved it. He was like, that's awesome. But you just spent hundreds of millions of my dollars to learn. He's like, what did you get out of this? What did you do out of this? I want to know what you're going to do next. You made the biggest mistake. That's awesome. It means you're going to make the biggest leap forward. What are you going to do now? A lot of people don't know that's where Alexa came from. It's like half the team is the Alexa team that came out of that. Because they basically had a whole conversation and said, you know about voice, you know about hardware, we know what all the competitors are doing right now. We think we can do it faster and we can get out there quickly. Right? They have worse AI than Google, they have worse brand than Apple, they have worse infrastructure than Microsoft, and yet they kind of won. They're in like 30% of homes or whatever it is in the United States. And they just announced at CES that like doubled the amount of not only devices, but the number of devices of Alexa in the United States. Like they're doing crazy things because they have teams that are willing to stick their heads up. I encourage you, especially the next couple of years, keeping up with innovation, you have to celebrate failure more than the people that win. China is a like 5-day course that I'm not going to cover in the next 5 minutes, but it's a really important story right now. I get asked about this a lot. One of my best, just easy advices is read this book. If you have not heard of this book, you need to write it down, you can check it out. It's called AI Superpowers. It's from one of the brightest guys in the whole industry. It's Kai-Fu Lee. He was the CEO of Google China. He was the CEO of Microsoft's AI research division in China. And now he's gone off and he's the lead strategist for the largest VC in the hub of entrepreneurs, which is basically their Silicon Valley. He's really bright. And that guy basically gives a really easy version of how does he think it's going to happen and what's going to happen between us and China and everything else like that. Spoiler alert, a lot of it has to do with the next couple of years. They have access to data. Because all cool things like the Ministry of Information and everything else like that, there's no concept of GDPR or anything else like that, which is the beast for feeding machine learning. You need a whole lot of data. And when you have free access to data, you can do some really powerful stuff. But he doesn't see it play out for long, so you should really check out the book. The other one's always fun, so we're going to have a bunch more old people. And I say this just because people need to follow the normal trajectories of this, right? If you look at it, we're going the same way that Japan and everything else. We're going to have a vast more people that are not working compared to working. It's just how people are having kids. And there's a need to understand that both from an education standpoint, how you hire people, to your customers, to how you advertise, all that other kinds of stuff like that. It's just going to shift a lot. And a lot of companies are trying to keep this in mind when shaping their thought processes, right? I meet with a lot of media companies, and they recently said that AARP is like a media beast. It kind of is, because they have a whole audience that they really managed to captivate with that aging group. And ironically too, this is part of the reason why people don't think China is going to play out in the next 10, 15 years, is the kind of behemoth that it is right now, is because they're having kids. And that means they go much faster to the age of where people are not working versus working. And that means they have to do robotics and all that things like that really quickly, which on the pan. But yeah, that's going to change their trajectory quite a lot. But at the same time, you're going to have also younger people. And I say this because a lot of people are not understanding this at just level scale. I think it was what Super Awesome had. It said that 40% of new users on the internet are under the age of 10. And as a parent of kids with, they're just starting to get online and everything else like that. The controls, the capabilities, and the privacy and everything else like that is not really well wired. So we're seeing a lot of companies have to reimagine. They use devices and train people on devices and all the privacy and the laws around it. All the stuff that Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon and everything else has had to do for years. Now every company has to do and understand the level of privacy required. Super Awesome just got another huge round from Microsoft's venture fund. We're seeing a lot of other companies invest in kid tech because all devices you build are going to be used by somebody under the age of 10. That just changes your mindset a lot. The other one, you guys know this. This is a lesson for a lot of other groups out there, but for you, probably just a reiteration of this. We're getting to the point where you can't literally make something smaller. We're getting to the point where, quantum string theory and all the rest of these things are literally making it so, these things are jumping over lines because we're down to that size of scale. And we get into a problem of not being able to shrink the device anymore. But in the reverse, a lot of it is actually coming in the software side. A lot of companies are focused on this. I can tell you, working with even Amazon and Google and all the rest of them that are on this cloud technology building our chips, a lot of it is spent on fixing the software. Because the stuff that you write in Python and everything else like that is terrible compared to the assembly and everything back from ages before, which was really more sophisticated. And there's a lot of tools that people are going to focus on that to get the Moore's Law to continue, is because we have to focus on the other side of the equation, because you literally can't make it small. We're also going to see some really cool stuff happen in the next couple of years. And this is everything from adaptive AI to contextual AI to especially robot learning. If you do machine learning, you have to feed something a whole lot of data before it can make an understanding, right? When I met with the Google project team, they talked about, it's the equivalent of asking a stadium full of toddlers a question, is this a cat? And just hoping that at last you got the right answer. That's what machine learning is. You have to have millions of rows of data to do all things like that. That's not how human beings work, right? I can show a child under the age of 5 a picture of a cat. They can see about 2 of them, and then they know every cat on the planet. That's something that we need to figure out. That's really what robotic learning is. It's being able to learn something without the data that's enforced into it from machine learning. And we're going to see some really cool stuff here. One of them, which has been really interesting that I've been noticing, and Google's been doing very well, this is contextual learning, when you're talking to Google versus when you're talking about Google, because I do a lot of meetings in my room, and there's times when I'm talking about it and Google used to light up, and I've talked to the team, they can actually change it to know I'm not talking to you, I'm talking about you. And And that's stuff that actually gets really good with contextual learning. It's another piece of this. The last one I love sharing because it didn't show up in the news and it drove me nuts. You used to see all the stuff about like AlphaGo and all the stuff for Google, DeepMind, and everything else like that. It's beating all these cool players. They actually worked on a really cool project where they created a poker bot. And this poker bot basically beat every single major poker star and made a whole bunch of fake money online and everything else like that. And it's the first time ever they released it saying like, yeah, we can't do the white paper for this. Like, we can't share with you the results of this because if everybody had on their cell phone the poker bot, like Vegas collapses. And that's just to show the level of understanding we're getting to. That's an imperfect game. That's a very important thing. Everything is about like notions of looks and randomness of faking people out and everything else like that. There's a lot of depth that goes into that compared to a very visible game like Go or chess and the rest. But we're getting to the point where it doesn't need all the information to get into an imperfect AI. And that's really important because that can do everything from guessing, stock, advances, all that kind of stuff like that. Like, we can do some really cool stuff with this. So lastly, I'm going to teach just a very basic lesson. Every time you do technology, we go 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's something I was told over and over again from my mentor. He was the oldest guy at Salesforce. He's 72 years old. He told us multiple times, just understand this is what happens with technology. And I can tell you this because everybody's thinking negatively about the future right now. I can tell you there's so many people that always come up and say like, hey, have you seen this episode of Black Mirror, or did you see Blade Runner, Terminator, Mad Max, or whatever. Like every single thing out there about the media industry is feeding us onto us about we're going to do some really bad stuff. But the difference is we always do some stuff when we jump forward really fast, but then we figure it out and we go back. The perfect example of this is one of the biggest announcements last year. It didn't hit the news, which drove me nuts again, is Google Core. If you didn't see what Google Core was, it's basically the capabilities of running AI on small embedded devices on the edge that don't have to talk to the internet or pass the information out. Right? That gives us a really valuable capability into doing things that we want to do, but don't give up your privacy. Right? All the stuff about like walking in front of a retail store in China and knowing everything about you. To the reverse of like, people say like, it'd be really valuable to have a camera inside of a hospital room. You can imagine everybody freak out about that, right? Saying like, no, where's my data going to? Who owns this? I don't want my kids, going to some medical database, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Google Coral, it allows you to do that. And they worked with a company called Care.ai to create these little cameras. The camera does image recognition, voice recognition, all that kind of basic stuff on a little embedded device. And it would let the nurse know if somebody fell out of bed, somebody got up, somebody's in the room that's not supposed to be in the room, all that kind of basic stuff. And then all it does is text message out of that little device out to the nurse to say, get in the room. That's a really cool capability. That's when you actually get to what we used to call the real IoT, which is the intelligence of things. Not everything's connected and they're all stupid. It's like when they're connected and they actually provide value. That's when we actually really take off. We needed devices like this to do this that didn't give away our privacy. And that's a really important step of this, that we're going to need these cool capabilities of intelligence, but without giving everything away. We're also getting really, really, really good at using machine learning to understand the body. And I say this because we had somebody at Salesforce just recently go through this. Their husband had a stroke and lost like all, executive functioning capability and all that stuff like that. And they worked with the MIT health research arm, the Stanford medical research arm, they're working on them. And they're starting to use this where they can actually hook people up to devices and they can allow them to speak. And the team that's actually behind this said we were only a few years short because what they wanted to do was actually give Stephen Hawking the ability to talk. And that would have been amazing. And those things where people are locked in their bodies and unable to discuss and communicate with other people, we're getting really close to this kind of technology. Now, people freak out about this and they're like, oh my God, they're going to read our brains, they're going to know how to advertise. No, they're going to do something valuable that like let you talk if you can't talk. And we're going to get to these really important steps. We just have to figure out how to do it right. The internet is going to keep fracturing. I know Mobile World Congress is going to be going on soon. I work with the Comcast, the AT&Ts, and the T-Mobile, and all the rest of them. I keep telling them they need to pay attention to Starlink. There's some really interesting things that are going to space. And it's actually a valuable tool, though. There is times that we actually want to fracture the internet compared to the global capabilities that we have right now. I'll step aside from any sort of politics conversation on that, but at the same side, it's a very valuable tool that we're going to understand how to better communicate and have controls in that, and then just giving access to everybody. Like the cool stuff about Starlink is not that you guys, have like you get internet like in the middle of Silicon Valley. You probably have access to that. It's when you're out in the middle of a boat on the ocean, or you're literally in the middle of like Wisconsin somewhere, and you get 5G capability. that's really empowering and unlocks people so they don't have to live around here where it's crazily expensive to live around here. You can live somewhere else and you do some really cool stuff. Deepfake technology, there's a lot of people asking about this, especially with the Oscars going on and everything else like that. I can tell you, don't worry about it. It's a phase. If you remember, there was a time and point when Photoshop was the scary thing. It's like, oh my God, I didn't have that person at that party or whatever it was. Nobody cares, right? Like anybody under the age of 10 or 15 has already seen all kinds of tools, deepfake technology. You just get thick into it, right? When you're new to the technology, it's crazy, it's bad, everything's gonna be wrong about it. If you're grown up and do it, it's just normal. And that gets into a mindset that deepfake technology is gonna freak out a bunch of old people that are trying to create laws about it versus the younger generation are like, yeah, I don't care. On the reverse of this though, we're actually using it to do some really creative stuff. Like, we're using deepfake technology to create fake faces so we can train machine learning, because most of the actual face databases out there are all a bunch of white guys, and it doesn't really do good for the whole rest of the world from a facial recognition standpoint. You can create hundreds of millions of really fake faces that look realistic, then you can train what's actually a real face and not a face. We're doing some really cool stuff there. And the last one, super important, is protecting people like whistleblowers. There's some really cool stuff where we're starting to use deepfake technology to actually do that kind of stuff. If you didn't see when there was all the Hong Kong protests kind of at its height and there were people streaming on Twitch, they were using deepfake technology to cover their voice and cover their face a lot of times because you don't want the Chinese government to know that you're talking about how China's terrible because they do the spirit. And there's some really powerful stuff there, just using this to help people when they need it. And then this last one is really important because blockchain is like the buzzword that you heard for a long time and people thought about Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies and all this other kinds like that. And then nothing happened and it's hit this like, Gartner says it's the trough of disillusionment, right? Where, blockchain's nothing. Blockchain is incredibly powerful. It is like the equivalent of SQL. It's not going to hit, headlines around the world. It's like, hey, we announced a new version of SQL. No, it does everything underneath behind the scenes. It unlocks a really cool capability. It just took time for people to get off this stuff. Like, it's not cryptos and blockchain and Bitcoin and everything else. Like, there's some really cool stuff underneath this. And the perfect example of this is in the medical industry. If anybody that has had to go through this whole kind of, go to different doctor's offices or go to an ER and everything else like that, they're carrying around binders of, their medical record information. They're having to fax stuff from like hospital office to hospital office. It's like terrible. Versus what Oasis Labs is doing, stand for Medical Research Labs, where I can have my entire medical record history on my watch. I can literally walk in, wave my hand, they get all the consent, it'll show up. Do you want to give it to them? Yes. Here's all my medical record information. And that's everything they know. If it's ever accessed, it beeps on my watch. On the reverse is the same side of like a 23andMe or a Novartis or a Pfizer or a rest of them and say like, hey, I need your medical record information for the last 10 years, or I want your sleeping data for the last like 2 years, whatever. I'll pay you $10 or $5 for it. You can say yes or no. You can never do that kind of stuff, paying people for information without blockchain and keeping track of it. And that's a simple idea that really was unlocked by this capability. And we're going to see a lot more as people figure this out. Like supply chain is the big one a lot of people are talking about. There's a lot of really cool stuff. It's not going to hit headlines, but just realize it just takes people to realize, okay, step back, how does it actually get used? There's some really good stuff there. I show this in every presentation I do, and I'll do it to the day I die. It's like the perfect example of this. I have a neat little story. So I have two boys that are 9 and 11 years old. They're both autistic, they're on the spectrum. And we were part of a project at Stanford and Google called Autism Glass. So my kids, literally right now, get to wear a new version of Google Glass to school. And what it does is when you look at somebody, it has a camera that's on at all times. It does facial recognition, emotional detection, eye contact detection, and it will record interaction with students. So my kids will look at me, they'll say, Dad is happy. They'll run around the playground, kid will fall down, they'll look at him, then they'll say like, oh, Timmy is either hurt or happy. And then when they start talking, it gets recorded and it goes to the phone of the therapist. It's awesome. Okay, I could spend a whole hour talking about this. Like, this is miles above everything we've ever seen in this whole space, right? Like I had to spend hundreds of thousands of hours with little flashcards of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck trying to explain motion to my kids. It's alive on the playground. They can interact with the student. They can understand emotion, and the therapist actually knows what to work on. Instead of just guessing, they actually see what my son does, like interaction with the student. It's amazing. Google Glass was a bomb. It destroyed their whole vision of what is an augmented reality glass. Like they put it on models on runways in New York for some god-awful reason, and it melted the side of your head, and it lasted like 20 minutes. Like nobody has one anymore. Like it was this terrible moment in history. You take something very basic, like machine learning, and you plug it into that, and you'll literally change therapy for millions of kids on the planet. Like, it's this huge change. They did this really cool thing where in India, which doesn't have like a classification for autism and the spectrum, etc., like they don't get a lot of services. People are just kept out of public. They literally sent 20,000 of these headsets, because everybody over there already has an Android phone. This headset's like $70 or whatever it is. Give it to everybody, and they can now do therapy at home. And they can show them all this kind of cool stuff in motion. It's immensely powerful. Just don't freak out about it. When you see a new technology, your immediate thought is everything is going to be wrong. And the reason why is because that's how human beings are wired. If you actually look at it, I did fMRI scans of people at Stanford, and I asked them about the future. I said, where are you at 1 year or 2 years from now? And they found out when you ask that question to an individual, the personal identification area of the self on the brain shuts off. It totally makes sense. Why people procrastinate, it's somebody else's problem. It's like why they don't save for retirement, they give their money to a stranger. It's like when all these technologies show up, like everything's going to be terrible. It's because of that mindset that just everything's going to make a wrong choice because they're not me. And I learned this a lot also, boss. 72 years old, oldest guy at Salesforce. He's been doing this forever. He's like the Deus Ex guy in the IT world. The guy is awesome. And he told us multiple times, this is what you're going to see. Every single time you have new technology, every single time you do a big wave, you're going to see this. This is Time Magazine where it talks about we're going to have automation to prevent the economy from having any new jobs. We're going to eliminate all service and office jobs. All you guys are going to be replaced by an algorithm. We're all going to have to stream on Twitch for a living, and it has to be basic income. Like, there's all this crazy stuff that people are all like freaking out about right now. It's a valuable conversation, but my boss told me this all the time. It's not a new story. This is a cyclical thing. Right, this is in 1961 when computers first came out. We thought we understood what was going to happen. We had no idea. People were freaking out. We still had Russians in the news, which is going to be a recurring thing at the end of time. It's just a thing that people think negatively about the future. I encourage you, when you look at it, there's a lot of really powerful stuff out there. Step back, take a breather, and realize we're going to do some really cool stuff. And that's it. Thanks.